Howdy, folks. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. Look what we found. Look at this guy down here. There you go. Pete Tessier is joining us, and we're going to discuss a few things. Winnipeg, and unfortunately, the death of a great hockey player way too early. But we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
Well, talking about classic lineups, and this is part of the classic lineup of this show, thanks to Pete. Yesterday, John Anderson got interviewed about what Steve Howe said about him recently as far as a reunion. And the classic, just so people know, the classic Yes reunion, the last one happened in 2004. They've had a lot of iterations since, a lot of real good ones. But the one that goes under Yes now is not great. And John Anderson wanted to get together with Howe, and Howe said, not going to happen. And he came up with these curmudgeon-y reasons. And Anderson, in an interview, basically said, well, to be honest, this band's not good enough. He says they're good, but they're not good enough. And really, he makes a good point, because Anderson's been touring with some pretty world-renowned musicians for the last couple of years. And look, Howe is still great, and Alan White, but he's talking about the other pieces and parts that he probably would make a change with. And you know, it's a little sad. The 2004 show that I saw, the 35th anniversary, was at the Spectrum, and that show was just fantastic. At that time, I didn't realize that would be the last time I'm seeing the classic lineup, but that's when it was.
Yeah, I mean, and I've said this before, I saw the Union tour, and at that point, I should have just stopped. I did see Yes a couple times after that, but the Union tour with everyone, with Bruford and White, with Kay and with Wakeman, with Bruford and with Alan White. I mean, it was everybody. And it's like,
yeah, I saw that at the Spectrum too. That was awesome. You
can't top that. And at that point, it's like, then just don't even bother going to see it. But I've seen Anderson, Wakeman, and Rabin. I've seen, them a couple other times after that. But it's like the Genesis reunion. It's never going to happen again. It's never going to happen. So, just live with what's on YouTube and just enjoy that, because it's
turn the page.
Yeah, unfortunately. But anyway, okay, let's get started. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Wednesday, August 19th, 2020.
I'm Anthony Mangione from Sunrise Philly Magazine.
I'm Pete Tessier in Winnipeg, Manitoba, back for a guest appearance.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Lagello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. All right, let's start with the news that broke yesterday. That's one of the reasons we're having Pete on the show, although we would have him if he was available, but he isn't as much, unfortunately. But the early and untimely and sad passing of Dale Hawerchuk, the Hockey Hall of Famer, who died at the age of 57 after a long battle with cancer. Peter, I'll start with you, because he was in Buffalo for a time, and that sort of gave me a bigger appreciation. I appreciated Hawerchuk and what he did, but in Winnipeg. But of course, being in the East, we didn't get to see him as much. You saw him a lot during his early days with the Jets, and I don't think people realize how great of a player he was.
No, I mean, the sad thing for Dale Hawerchuk is that his dominance was overshadowed by this guy named Wayne Gretzky.
Right.
And if you didn't have Wayne Gretzky, Dale Hawerchuk would be known as the second best player of his generation after Mario Lemieux, probably.
Yeah.
I don't think if you look at some of his records, what he did, his rookie goal scoring stuff, they're incredible. And I think the one thing that went around Twitter a lot, particularly in Winnipeg yesterday, was in that Game 3 of the '87 Canada Cup final.
Yeah,
it was Dale Hawerchuk taking the face-off. You think about this: Lemieux, Hawerchuk, and Gretzky all lining up together. I mean, it's bonkers. But if Hawerchuk hadn't won that face-off, the puck never gets up the ice, and history might be changed. And I think that's what a lot of Winnipeggers sort of kind of hold on to, was that their guy was there at that point, and it was him. And even after Hawerchuk had left Winnipeg in terms of his playing career, he had a property here up north of Gimli, a beautiful home that everyone knew, hey, that's Hawerchuk's place. There's a golf course by it. He was part of the community. he would come back and do charity work. He was here for the first Jets game when they returned against the Montreal Canadiens doing an event. I was happy to be there. And one of the interesting things he said at that event was, this is when Scheifele had been lighting it up in the preseason after he'd been drafted. And he said, guys, I know you love Mark Scheifele, but you let me have him for a couple more years. I'll turn him into an even better player. And, he was true to his words, right? Like, that was just a relationship he had with the city. And he never forgot what he meant to them. And the stuff you're seeing come out from card signings, people rolling this poster, it's in the skate shack that at our local community center, the guy who runs it has it. It's Hawerchuk when he was 18 in a tuxedo with the 10 of diamonds coming out of his hip pocket on it. And it's so cheesy, but it's so awesome. I'm going to find a photo of it and post it to send to you guys. It's just amazing.
Absolutely.
I think the telling thing about this, and what probably makes it really sad for a lot of people, is we realized that Dale knew he was going to die.
Yeah.
And he reached out to a lot of people. And that's really touching. Teemu Selanne had a phone call from him the night before.
Well, that
passed away.
I don't know.
That's the story I heard.
Yeah, I don't know who posted it in our group chat, but the article from Dave Stubbs,
yes,
relating Serge Savard's story. I mean, Serge Savard came out of retirement to play for John Ferguson in Winnipeg, be the adult with a bunch of young kids, a team that had been really was not ready the first year. He was a leader, he was a veteran guy, and Hawerchuk was an 18-year-old. Hawerchuk was babysitting his daughter. Yeah. Him and a couple other players lived on the same street, but it was just like Hawerchuk called him a couple days ago to basically say goodbye and to ask him to say goodbye to his wife and to his kids. And I mean, honestly, like I was holding back tears when I read that because it was just so moving.
On a side note, Pete, how was Ferguson dealt with in Winnipeg? I didn't like him in New York. I'll be honest.
Not favorably.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, you'd have to be really inept to have screwed up that Hawerchuk pick. Like, he did pick him, but history in Winnipeg does not look fondly on him.
I'm glad it doesn't run in the family, Russ.
I do want to mention this, and then I'll let Anthony go because I'm sure he's got something. We all saw him play. I actually met him as a coach and I put the story up on Twitter. I drove 8 hours to go see a Barrie Erie game, and that was because it was going to be McDavid Ekblad. And so, why else would you drive 8 hours for one game, right? But these were going to be like the two next number one picks. Right. So I had to do it. And I went up there, and I was going up with the owner, Chris Rupert of Sunrise Magazine. So I said, all right, you talk to McDavid, I'll talk to Ekblad, because I already knew McDavid wasn't a great interview. So I sent Chris with that. And I said, let me see what Ekblad's like. I know that was not nice. But so I go and I asked the equipment guy, hey, could I speak to, Aaron Ekblad and Kevin LeBanc, because he was from Staten Island and I was just learning about him. So I said, all right, let me talk to these guys. And LeBanc had come out and there was a little bit of wait for Ekblad. And all of a sudden out of his office, Dale Hawerchuk comes walking out. He's got his suitcase and he looks at me. He goes, who are you waiting on? And I said, Aaron Ekblad. He goes, I saw you waiting. I already spoke to the equipment guy. He'll be right out. And that let me know that this guy, what his team meant to him, but also like being a professional and all those things. And Ekblad came up to me and he shook my hand. He said, hey, sorry about the wait. That was all Hawerchuk, man. Yeah. And I was so impressed. I really was.
Russ, sorry to jump in here, but I think you raised a really good point of, Ferguson brought in Savard to help this kid and to form a relationship with him and teach him how to grow into a man and be a class act. And he just bestowed that down on people.
Yeah.
And that's his relationship. And, to tie it in here, he also played for the Flyers.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. That was actually my next. That was going to be basically my point here, was the fact that late in his career, he was traded from the Blues to the Flyers, and solid. I mean, he had a pretty he was in the midst of a pretty solid campaign. He was at 66 games, so around the trade deadline, he had 41 points. He basically was there to kind of give Philadelphia that season and an addition that veteran center that they had lost after Craig McTavish had left to go to St. Louis of all places, and then in this circumstance, obviously Hawerchuk ended up in Philadelphia. He finished up with 20 points. He had a very productive stretch. He had 20 points he only scored 4 goals. He had 20 points in 16 games.
He was still good on the power play, man.
And he was still good on the power play. He had 4 goals in the power play, I believe. I'm sorry, assist-wise, and he had a goal and 4 assists in the power play during the season. So. And then the following season, we started to kind of see him sort of hit the wall a little bit in his age 33 season. He was at 34 points at 51 games. And shortly after, I believe at that point, he had retired as a Flyer. I think that was it at that point, that he ended up as a Flyer that season. So he gave them a short break. But I still remember as a teenager just how much, how excited I was that Dale Hawerchuk was a Philadelphia Flyer. Like, I remember watching him at the Jets and just
In '97, it's real blurry for me. Whatever happened after the Eastern Conference Finals, I just can't seem to remember. But
Peter, let me ask you this, because it was strange, because it wasn't 1990 that Winnipeg had a 3-1 lead on Edmonton
that was before my time ever in Winnipeg, but people still talk about that.
Right.
And I have a funny story. It doesn't necessarily relate to Hawerchuk, but they believed they could get past the Oilers. They pretty much had a clear path to the finals if they could get past the Oilers. They were up 3-1. And the guy I mentioned who has the skate shack with the poster of Hawerchuk, he had a buddy pull his car around to where the players' exit was when they went up 3-1, and he took out his golf clubs and he was mocking Messier with the golf clubs, going, see you on the course, Mess, and like swinging them out and stuff. Just you can blame that guy.
That's reminding me of Philadelphia when they were up on the Devils 3-1 in that series and they blew it. It was. And I felt like they had a chance of beating Dallas that year in that final, because they were rolling pretty well. But
I'm pretty sure it was Dave Ellett who scored in overtime in that Game 4, and they were up 3-1 and then lost the series. And then that summer they trade Hawerchuk, and of course I know this because it was to Buffalo in a massive deal that involved Phil Housley going the other way, which I didn't understand, because Housley was known as sort of a flawed one-way offensive defenseman, and Hawerchuk, even though he was 27 years old, was still great. But him in four seasons in Buffalo averaged over 90 points, and he was the number 2 behind LaFontaine. And I didn't appreciate how good he really was until I saw him every night play with the Sabres. That 1-2 punch of him and LaFontaine for most of those seasons until LaFontaine got hurt was incredible. The problem is that they didn't build a good enough team around those two guys to be able to win consistently.
Yeah, I was gonna say similar to when the Rangers got Messier, except Buffalo didn't get the results.
Right. So I mean, an absolutely fantastic career. We're talking about Dale Hawerchuk.
Right.
An absolutely fantastic career, and Russ, pretty good coach in junior as well. So
no, he's a real good coach. He did. A lot of players said how much he helped them develop, and clearly Ekblad was one of the big ones. But no, LeBanc. I mean, I brought up Kevin LeBanc. I mean, this is a guy who was largely lost in the USA hockey system. He got a lot of playing time with Hawerchuk, and after that, you know what? Then he started to get his name out there, and became a pretty good NHLer. So I think Hawerchuk really. I think as a player he did a lot, but I think as a coach, that's going to live on for a while through the players he coached.
I mean, really, in many ways, that becomes a legacy. I saw the Lemieux Blackwood photograph.
Yeah.
And it was just like that's becomes as much a part of his. We talk about his playing career, but it's who you affect going forward. Who who remembers you and carries your legacy. Nobody, and we mean nobody, could come up with any kind of even a sort of even. I mean, you never do that obviously when a person passes, but have you heard anybody as universally like almost beloved by everybody who recalled him as Dale Hawerchuk was?
Few and far between.
Yeah, and I've heard that I think it was Mark Chipman who said, there you go. Mark Chipman that said that a statue is going to be erected, and they had let Hawerchuk know that before, like months ago, that they were going to do that, and he was very honored. And I mean that's class. That's a great thing to do. So
yeah, and they put they've taken his hung banner from the arena right now and moved it across to where that statue is going to be in a place called True North Square, and it's hanging there now with a big video screen showing highlights and stuff.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like he was really important to the psychology of Winnipeg, and that he didn't come here, play, and leave and forgot about the city. And Winnipeg's always had a psychological inferiority complex, right? It's the place you fly over between Calgary, Vancouver, and Toronto. And for him to have that kind of sort of respect for the community and city that he essentially grew up in, it means so much to people here.
Yeah,
he was such a class character, and like you're saying, Peter, and it's wonderful to see you, Peter, too. Like you're saying, Peter, it's like how I kind of remember it. Like, this is a very old shirt. This is so small. This is like a kid shirt.
I was gonna say
from when I was a kid.
It's a little slim.
Yeah. Are you holding in your guts?
Yeah, my Hawerchuk shirt. No, it's like it's funny. So
well, we only have Peter for about 10 more minutes.
Yeah. So like you're saying, Peter, like the thing with me was that at the time that he was huge and he was great. You were dealing with the Battle of Alberta and all of its glory, right? Like, and he got kind of swallowed up in that because, Calgary and Edmonton were both so very, very good at that time. And people don't forget how good Winnipeg was at that time. It was just a matter of, bad timing on when they were good, because they'd been good at a different time, but in a very different world.
Well, I mean, was it 87, 88, 89, and 90? It was Edmonton, Calgary, Edmonton. So, so that's an indicator of what they were up against. Okay, Pete, in the few minutes we have left, I wanted to, because we didn't have you on when the Jets were eliminated by Calgary, and I think everybody here essentially said, it wasn't the failings of the Jets in terms of holes that they had. It was the fact that they were devastated by injuries right off the bat with Scheifele, with Matthew Perreault, with Laine. So I sort of give Paul Maurice and Cheveldayoff a pass on this year, because I think I had picked them to beat Calgary, and they just got devastated early on, and I think that killed.
I think so too, and I don't think Connor Hellebuck necessarily picked up from where he left off in the season. He needed a little more time to kind of get up to that form that's put him in the candidacy for the Vezina. Here's the rub that Winnipeg is talking about with this, and it's not necessarily specific to Winnipeg, but this is the question being asked. You have 10 seasons now under your belt as GM. Mm-hmm. You have 2 playoff series wins, 2 and 3 first round exits, essentially.
Right.
Is that something that you continue on with the GM and vision and the coach, or is it something that you say we need to make some changes? And does that mean roster changes? Does it mean coaching changes? Does it mean management changes? Yeah. And those are the hard questions that are sort of being talked about. Mm-hmm. In that, is it time to change because we've gotten as much out of this as we can? And I don't know. I don't really have an opinion on that.
You got an opinion.
That's a good question.
I can't believe you don't have an opinion on this, Peter.
I think the opinion, the reason I'd say stick with it is, one, they both have existing contracts that I don't think they're going to toss out, given the way the revenue model is right now and lack of revenue. So they don't want to be spending money on something that's sitting on the sidelines, so to speak.
True.
What I do think, though, is you now have some fairly significant cap space. Yeah. Do you get a chance to go out and use it? Because we know what happened last year. They lost all of their starting right side D.
Yeah.
Essentially, one Bufflin being the exception, but now he's gone.
Right.
So do you get the chance to fix that and address that now that you have $7.8 million of no longer above salary and some other cap space, because Kulikov will be off the books at $4.3 million too. So you're playing with $11 million in cap space that's just coming off.
Well,
should you have the ability to address that now?
Yeah.
Well,
That's my opinion.
Yeah,
I think that's valid. I really do. Go ahead, Mike.
Even more than that, Eakin's money of almost $4 million is coming off the books. We don't know about the future of Brian Little. There's been some talk about maybe he may not be able to continue his career. That's another $5.3 million. I mean, honestly, Peter, I look at the Jets, and again, they're the Western Conference compatriots of the Maple Leafs because they both are loaded at forward. They have problems on defense. Toronto's goaltending situation may not be as steady as Hawerchuk, but I think that's not the big issue for Toronto. But the advantage that Winnipeg has is right now they have the cap space to address it, but they also have situations up front like Laine 1 year away from a new contract. Whether they want to spend whatever it's going to take to get him re-signed. So there's a lot of questions.
Yeah, the only thing I would say, Peter, is they'll bring in Sandberg and he'll play right away. I'm pretty sure that's going to happen. If they want, they could use Heinola in a role. He showed that he could do it even last year. If they have to, that's not the worst thing in the world.
The only reason Heinola was sent back was because they didn't want him to get beat up because he hadn't matured physically yet. They didn't have a problem with the play. They said your learning curve is going to get you destroyed if you keep playing here. And that's why they moved him back. So there is some help on the way that way. I think the interesting thing is with their cap space, can they help a couple teams who are going to have cap troubles?
Right.
And can you get a player and take a pick or something? Because the prospect pool is a little thin now. It was very good for a while. And you look at teams that are rolling guys out, and I'll name this, the Flyers, right? Their prospect pool on who is available to them on a regular basis is extraordinary right now compared to the Jets. And they need to recoup that. And the only way you can do it right now for them is use your cap space to help another team, but get something in return that's a bit of a project, whether it's a prospect or a pick, because they don't have I think they're missing another pick this year too. They're a second round. I haven't checked recently, but they've got to address a couple issues that way. But should the will be there, they have the ability to do it given the situation.
Here's the last thing, Peter, for you. I know you got to get going, but I mean, we've talked before many times about this, and I'm not a coach. I'm not into their coach. I never have been. He's very much a polarizing figure. I felt like this year, when you look at it, how it plays out, with these big win streaks and big losing streaks, I feel like that's something that like a non-coached team kind of does. The Flyers used to do that when I felt like Hacksaw wasn't really coaching them, but letting them sort of do their own thing, where, seeing, some of the better, I'm just not sold on it. I'm not sold that he's consistent enough. What are your thoughts there?
You live and die with Paul Maurice and his coaching cycle. He comes in, he fixes things, he cleans things up, he gets you organized, but he's got a shelf life. But his shelf life is very defined because wherever he's been, Carolina twice, he gets you up, and then it's a slow or sometimes fast trickle down, and there's not a lot of recovery out of that.
Right.
Maurice is a great quote machine, right? Like the ownership loves him.
And the media love him.
And the media love him, and everything, that whole quote that you said about Jansen Harkins, right? That was going all over the place. Like, he's not wrong about it. But the point being is, well, how come did you give Nick Patan that chance? Did you give these for people who are looking at him, how come he's your favorite when he had to go back down to the ECHL and learn? Did you do the same for other players? So he says this, but people point out inconsistencies. Now, you're doing it from afar. You don't know the inner workings and of how these things work with players and their relationships too. But that's what sort of rubs people the wrong way, is that you feel like there's a little bit of smoke and mirrors with Maurice. Great quote, articulate, but he doesn't quite back up what he says.
Yeah, and then
and the players, a lot of players don't like him.
Yeah, well,
that's the reality. As much as the media loves him, as much as the people, there's a lot of players out there. There's a lot of players that it is rare for hockey players to take on distinct stances. Like, they'll say, like, I'm not a fan of that guy, I'm not a fan of this guy, but Paul Maurice, there are players I know that have taken like distinct stances that he is not a good guy, not a good coach, not a good person. I mean, it's rare to hear that out of hockey players. it's just so it's troubling a little bit. And I think he has taken you guys to a point.
Only matters what the owner thinks, really.
Yeah.
But I think Maurice will have players if he doesn't really evolve. I think there will be a former player who may take the approach that what's his face took about Commodore, about Babcock, someone who just right. Like. And Blake Wheeler has there was a quote Maurice talked about it, and I think it was when some of the stuff was coming out about Babcock and Crawford and Blake Wheeler. He talked about how Blake Wheeler once grabbed him after something, and he was going off on a guy, and Wheeler said to him, "Just be nice to the guy, or like don't you can make your point without being a dick."
Right.
Exactly.
And Maurice sort of said, "Yeah, I guess I can," but. You got and believe me, there's a lot of people would say the exact same thing about Blake Wheeler. He's not known as a big fluffy
player. He's a player.
He's a bit of an edge, but it takes someone of Wheeler's stature to be able to get through to him to say that, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
And that's, I think in this day and age, but also throughout time, I think there's a lot of coaches who would revisit some things and say, I probably should have addressed that differently rather than taking an Iron Mike Keenan approach. And I think
Laviolette is sitting there. Laviolette sitting there, Peter. And Laviolette took Carolina after Maurice to the promised land. And he's sitting there. And
so is Babcock, Peter.
Yeah, but Laviolette has already cleaned up a Paul Maurice team or taken what Paul Maurice he's not like he's a horrible coach.
Guys.
Well, let me final question here.
Yeah.
Because I don't perceive Maurice as a player's coach. I perceive him as sort of a hard ass.
Yeah.
Would the next coach, if it's somebody like Bruce Boudreau, be welcome? Would that going to the player's coach, going to the friendly, jovial type of guy like Boudreau is? Would that work?
Maybe. It depends on who's on the roster. What I think is I think the Jets were able to get Paul Maurice, a brand name coach, let's say at the time, at a discount because he was on TSN. He coached previously in the KHL. And I think if he was on the open market in a different way, it would have cost them more. And he's grown to probably a very significant salary, but not what that $4 to $5 million range that Boudreau would cost you.
Right.
Like he's not like, I don't think the Jets would go out and spend that much on a coach. Like they wouldn't even though Alain Vigneault has a history with Winnipeg because he coached the Moose here before he went to the Canucks, they wouldn't buy Vigneault. They just wouldn't do it. It's not in their wheelhouse and budget. So I think if it goes, they're getting someone who like Laviolette, like I could see them wanting to do it for the right reasons, but what's Lavi on the market? 3?
Yeah, 4? He's 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's got the resume.
Like, I just don't know if he's got the resume. So I just don't know if they would
look around and sees the box, sees the talent there. Lavi's a talent guy. Like he'll go someplace.
He likes fishing. Winnipeg's good for fishing. Oh, yeah. You know that.
Does he like big mosquitoes too?
I just to me, if Lavi like there, that team is suddenly very dangerous.
You live near a lake, Michael. That's all I'm gonna say.
I mean. I think Laviolette unleashes some things that have been pulled back from Line A. I mean, like I made a tweet about this earlier this season. And I said, Paul Maurice has turned a 44 goal scorer into a guy who might not even sniff 30 this year.
Right.
And it's all in the process of learning how to be what Maurice says. Line A can be a true power forward.
But you don't have
do you see Lining as a power forward?
No, you don't want to do that.
He wasn't even scouted that way. When
he get hurt like crazy. I mean, and I know we've said last question a bunch of times, but it's so good to have you back, Peter. But I will let you go after. I promise.
No, I got a little bit of time.
I promise. Which I love. Because here's the rumor that I've been hearing a lot of, and that is Jesse Puljujarvi. Okay.
Yeah.
And obviously you've heard that too. But Puljujarvi has a history with Patrick Laine, and and the two of them were pretty deadly together. Right, Russ, weren't they? They were a combo that was pretty good together.
Yeah, they played with Aho.
Him and Aho. Is that the line that they had in World
That was their line, yeah.
Right. So I mean, and Puljujarvi's biggest issue has been, culturally fitting in. He's friends with Laine.
Yeah.
I would assume. Like, I'm not positive about that. I don't know. Maybe who knows? But I would assume that they're friends. And if they are friends, I think he could be gotten for not too much. And if Edmonton's willing to deal, of course, within
the conference, is not within the division.
Not within the division, right? It's weird that they're not in the same division, but within the conference. What do you think of PRV?
I think it could be an option, but I mean, do they have to deal to get him when they could just bring in Heinola? Like,
yeah,
it's the same thing.
Did they play,
it's an interesting
play together though. Did they play on World Juniors together, Russ?
No.
No.
So I think they're looking at it from the interpersonal relationship between the two. That would be the reason why you would go Puljujarvi, I would think.
Yeah.
But, and you're going to Pete. Maybe you could trade Puljujarvi for Vesalainen because Vesalainen's going to take.
Yeah, Vesalainen has not worked out.
Right, and maybe you can make that trade.
Yeah, that's something too.
Yeah.
The other thing, I want to get back to sort of Paul Maurice a little bit in usage.
Yeah.
When the Jets traded for Kevin Hayes, they had him playing on the third line.
Right.
Now we see what Hayes has done in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Right. Like, is he a guy you want to throw on the third line and then structure his usage?
But there was the kind of the hint of stylistic use as well, and stylistically too, going to Winnipeg and how they played under Maurice versus he had a comfort zone coming to Philadelphia, already playing under Vigneault.
And Vigneault knew Hayes from New York, and
he became and he was basically
and that's why Hayes came to Philly. Hayes came to Philly because Vigneault's here.
And he also became for a lot of the players on the roster, sort of and Vigneault said that prior to the postseason. He said that he knows my looks, he knows what my stares, and is able to kind of translate and say, "This is what he means. This is what he wants out of you," and that's worth.
When the Rangers traded Hayes, though, Vigneault was not working, was he?
No,
he wasn't working. So
they were already on to Quinn was already coaching at that point. So
and he hadn't been hired by the Flyers yet.
Right,
so
actually,
that's one of those things where you wonder, should you go ahead, Russ?
Just so you know, Puljujarvi's second World Juniors, he did play with those guys, not his first.
Okay, fine. All right.
Yeah, you're right.
He was in two, so that's what it was.
So there was cross pollination there. Okay.
Yeah, 2017.
And the Jets do have a lady who's from Finland who's a hockey consultant here as well for them. So
see, that's great. You need that. This is what you need for just
Well,
I really feel like I've talked to people in Finland, and they say he has gotten his act together a lot. They really feel like he's just as younger.
He's worth a shot. I mean, there's no reason not to try it if you could handle the cost. And I think Edmonton would take that trade that I offered. I do.
Well, while we have Pete here, let's move on to the team that got eliminated last night, the Chicago Blackhawks, who lost to Vegas, which was not a big surprise because I think everybody knew that the Blackhawks matched up well with a porous Edmonton defense and beat the Oilers, but against a team that was capable of playing two-way hockey like Vegas, they were in tough. And I give them a lot of credit. They kept the games tight against Vegas. But in the end, I think Vegas outclassed them. But looking at the Blackhawks, and we started to do this a couple days ago when I think we saw the direction of this series. I look at the Blackhawks, Peter, and Jan, I wanted to get your input on this too. Brandon Saad, $6 million, final year of his contract. Zach Smith, final year of his contract, $3.25 million. If there's any way they can clear that money and add, I'd say 1 to 2 defensemen and solidify their goaltending situation, I think the Blackhawks are a playoff team next year.
Pete?
I think it could happen. I actually, when at the beginning of this season back in September, I thought they might squeak in. That was my sort of dark horse bet. I think they could. I mean, I think Stan Bowman's got to pull a bit of a rabbit out and make some pretty miraculous things happen for that to happen. And he's got to pray, and it doesn't seem it's going to happen, that time doesn't hit Patrick Kane yet, but it always does eventually. But that guy seems to defy the odds. And with Taves having a bit of a resurgent season, if he's got a little more gas in the tank now, in terms of just not having to play all those playoff grinds, and you're not ground down a bit, there is potential. But Bowman's going to have to make some pretty deft moves. That's for sure.
I mean, Robin Leonard was in that. I think one of the moves that was. I think one of the moves.
That was a mess. Come on now, a
mess.
Let's not go there. There was last night.
We talked about it also, right, Mike? I mean,
go ahead, Jan.
The big move is obviously Brent Seabrook's contract. I mean, we can talk all around the edges, right? Saad's contract is big. I mean, but you got Oli Mata and Connor Murphy making almost $8 million combined, which is also a waste of money to a certain extent. Now, Murphy was better this round, but clearly not living up to that contract. And Mata, I mean, he's not a $4 million defenseman. So I think we all believe that Corey Crawford is fairly likely to be back there. I mean, especially given the way he played in the playoffs. I think it's a better than 50-50 shot he returns to that team, given the history and what he's provided them. But, if they can find a way to get Seabrook's contract on long-term IR, and we discussed this, he may not want to go that route.
Right.
They're going to have to make then other drastic moves if they can't find a way to get rid of that contract.
Well, I think you're going to get a hint of what direction they're going if they hire as a special consultant Jeff Gillooly, because that might be what they have to do to Seabrook to keep him out of the lineup.
The other team I want to get Peter's thought on is Vancouver, because Peter's a big Vancouver guy, obviously. And what you're seeing from them.
Well, I liked it they got lucky. Let's be honest. They were up 2-0 lucky. And now all of a sudden, Ryan O'Reilly's showing up and he's taking over games. And unless they find a way to shut him down, I think the writing's on the wall for the Canucks. It's been fun. But I think the Blues have come out of their slumber. They're now realizing this is how we have to play. Berube's got him moving, and O'Reilly's feeling it. He's really feeling it right now.
I did pick him to win this series in 7 just because I thought there's always an upset in the first round. This felt like the one that could be to me, but and St. Louis was just uninspired, and I still think it could happen. But at the same time, it feels like they're like a couple years early. Like we're a couple years from now, Vancouver. It's a different story. Like this Vancouver team definitely on the right track.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's Quinn Hughes and a bunch of guys. That's their blue line.
Exactly.
Yeah.
With Tyler Myers injured and Jordy Ben on, I think, maternity leave, basically.
Right, with Myers out. Yeah.
Right. That really, like I said, that lack of size of the blue line, having to play Stetcher and play Edler in a shutdown role, just doesn't work.
Yeah, no question. I mean, they're fun to watch, though. I mean,
Quinn Hughes has been an absolute treat to watch. That guy is something special. And it'll be interesting. The what I do think is going to happen this offseason is you're definitely going to see Jake Virtanen moved out of Vancouver.
Yeah, I can see that.
I think that relationship has finally hit the end of it.
Yeah.
And I think Virtanen can be a decent player for another team, given the right coach and the right situation. And, he needs a fresh start and to get out of that thing. It's become a little too toxic in a few places.
He's the modern day Pavel Brendel.
Wow.
That's like jump. Woo, that's like taking a jump off the wall.
That's my throwback.
Just to provide an update here, Columbus is taking a 3-2 lead with 15 seconds left to go in the second.
And they are outshooting. They're outshooting them 34-15 right now.
This is desperate.
Stops was a concern earlier.
They're like the Black Knight and Monty Python.
Get home.
There's a guy go back to, and I'll wrap up here because you have to run. But there's a guy who has all the stigma and reputation attached to him, and somehow Torts has seemed to be able to reinvent himself in a different kind of way in the last few years. He's still got that underbelly of classic Torts, but he's a bit of a different guy now. He's doing things that we've never seen him do.
Peter,
it's fun. He really is.
He's almost human.
Turn this off. I think he loves this team. I think he absolutely loves this team so much that I think that he's like.
It reminds him of him. Basically, that's what it is. Short guy.
Treating like
his media availability yesterday lasted 40 seconds.
That's fantastic.
There was one question, and nobody had a follow up because they knew he wasn't going to answer anything.
That's what he does. That's what he does, and that takes the pressure off of his team and puts the pressure on him.
Now, I will say this as well. This is also the inherent issues with Zoom press conferences. Is like you get that weird pregnant pause where normally the coach could read the room, sort of.
Yeah, I love it.
Sort of, poke fun and stuff. Now it's like I don't know what they're seeing. They're obviously, because I just got out of a press conference with Elaine Vigneault at 12:30, and it's weird because it's just. You can tell they're in an empty room. There's a camera, and that's it. And it's
there's no buzz. Anyways, guys, pleasure to see you all again. Take care. Be safe out in this world, and we'll touch base soon. Thanks.
Thanks. So you guys are funny. First of all, I throw this out to these bozos here on my show with me here today. We have our group chat, and man, it's like the second anyone falls behind in a game, it's like, oh, goodbye to them. I
don't say that. Don't you put that evil on me.
No, Anthony, I'm going to actually tell you right. It's not you.
Mike and Jan is like, you're the master of the. Jan, like it's Jan Killshot.
It's over.
Everything's a kill shot.
I know it's over. It's like
Jan on the grassy knoll.
They're dead. They're dead. They're dead.
Yeah,
I should have let off with that. It should have said could be Sayonara Columbus. I forgot to put that in. My mistake.
Whatever.
Here, let's go with some easy territory here, because after a second extremely boring win by the Philadelphia Flyers, the Montreal Canadiens, and honestly, I shouldn't say anything because I'll take boring.
You're on the golf course. Keep quiet over there.
I'll take boring wins over exciting losses any day.
All good wins are always better.
What I'm saying here is I'm focusing my ire on the losing squad. If you're gonna tell me that Mark Bergevin isn't saying to himself, God damn it, we should have just lost to Pittsburgh and we would have had a chance at Lafreniere, I'm telling you that's what he's saying to himself. Because
let me go grab a noose and some pills. We have to go down this thing. Oh God.
Yes, baby, we do.
Let's just accept the fact that forever I will have a different opinion than
yeah, of course.
Than Mike and Russ and Jan. At least I don't know what your opinion necessarily is on Anthony, but like my opinion will stand firm that they are getting more out of this than they would have out of getting a shot at a guy that they wouldn't have gotten anyway. But they're getting more out of this as a team. And more, and that we've seen these teams that just tank it, and the losing culture is a real thing. It's a real thing in Edmonton. It's a real thing in Toronto. Creating a little bit of a winning culture here, cooking him, and what you're getting out of him, the growth you're getting out of him alone by being in these playoffs, it more than compensates for the small chance you had at getting Lafreniere. I mean, it's ridiculous to me, this argument.
How is it ridiculous? Who's Kotkaniemi going to play with? If he had someone to play with, I might agree with you.
I don't think Suzuki's a bad player.
No, Suzuki's really good, but he needs a line. They don't have one good line.
You know who their big acquisition in free agency is going to be? If you're talking about people willing to go to Montreal, Ilya Kovalchuk. That's who their big they've got tons of money in caps under the cap, but nobody will go to Montreal because they get excoriated there if they do one wrong thing. So I mean,
that is true, and I grant. But now we live in the social media world where that's true a lot of places now. It's not just Montreal.
They're probably going to trade Max Domi, who was arguably their best player last year.
Going to do that.
I
think that. Listen, at the end of the day,
we did see in this series with Domi the best and the worst. I think so far.
We did.
We saw in the 5-0 game. How he can be a lightning bolt of offense. He's assist where he's off, but then you get he just a tie streak in him, where the spearing incident and it completely derails things for Montreal, and I can see now why stuff like that got him knocked down to third and fourth line this year.
He's still a young player though, and I bring up Kadri as an example. Kadri, Kadri obviously. But if a player like that can find themselves,
and my assertion with Kadri, and I have absolutely no way of proving this, had they not traded him, he would have gotten suspended in the Columbus series too.
Oh, you don't know. I mean, you definitely know that he needed a new change.
Yes,
we all do that. For the kind of guy he was, playing in front of his friends all the time wasn't the best thing in the world, right?
And the talk about Domi is that maybe he ends up in Pittsburgh because there's a relationship between Domi's family and the Lemieux family, who obviously own the Penguins. But I'm just saying, I'm looking at that team, and I will grant you the young players like Kotkaniemi and Suzuki and maybe Paling and Romanoff, and
Paling could every season
decent players. You're starting to see
they have some decent players there, but they need people other than those young guys. They need veterans who can supplement that offense, and they really don't have it. Tatar and Byron, and that's not enough. They need, I'd say, 2 to 3 scoring forwards, and I don't know how the hell they get that unless they trade some of those young guys to get them, because they can't get anybody to sign there.
I say first of all, there's the thing with the flat cap is going to make it interesting for them, because there's going to be players that are going to be left out there and not signed. And at the end of the day, as much as we talk about the taxes in Quebec, which are horrendous, and the pressure in Montreal, which is horrendous, but is it more than the pressure in Toronto? I don't.
Well, this is the one advantage that Bergevin has. He has 14 draft picks in the upcoming draft, and they've got tons of cap space, over $20 million.
I think for that cap space, they will have guys that they'll be able to get. And Montreal, even though they like to be hated on this show, they are still the Montreal freaking Canadiens, and there are players out there who still.
I don't think we hate on them.
That sweater over their head.
Bergevin all along.
I admit, I can separate my fandom hatred from my respect for an organization and the way that they approach things. I don't agree with the way Montreal has approached things over the last few years. They've basically hung Carey Price out to dry, making him have to make 45.
They've had some down years. There's no two ways about that.
And if Bergevin does what I was referring to is
bad coaches too.
He can trade a draft pick or two for a player under an existing contract, and because they have all these extra picks, and they don't have to worry about going out and signing free agents because they'll be getting a player under contract. If they can do that, like they've done in the past with a guy like Domi, then that could help them surround their young core with players that can help them. But they have to do that. They can't keep all 14 draft picks. They have to go out and make deals that make sense.
They do. And the bottom line is, in the past, they were a team where no one saw a strong future. There was no star coming like they have now, in Cook and Yemi. They've got a star coming. They've got, some good solid defense now that we're starting to see as well.
But even Cook and Yemi is not a goal scorer. They don't have.
I know, but he still is like the kind of guy that you want to look at and you want to say, okay, this is, and there still is Carey Price there. And if Carey Price, I think a lot of people thought Carey Price was over the hill. I think that's been.
But where are they getting goals from? They need goal scoring.
That's what I'm saying is this is how they get goal scoring by going out and getting players to come there because the situation has changed where, it doesn't take a lot to tilt the thing back in their favor. There was a time when everyone wanted to play there.
And for those people who think like the window on the Penguins is closed because Malkin and Crosby are, I think, 32 and 33. Carey Price is 33, and I know the goaltenders usually have a longer shelf life than forwards, but I'm sorry, the window is closing, and I think they've wasted the last 2 to 3 years of Carey Price's career on this, twiddling their thumbs and doing the wrong things when they should have been more proactive, and they haven't been.
I'll say before and I don't want to bang this drum too much because we have so much else to talk about, but I do want to say this. I still think they're the most likely team to come back from 3-1 in any of these series. I'll throw that out there too. I think that they are, of any of the 3-1 series. I put Columbus. I listed today in the order that I thought they would be, and to me, Montreal number 1, Columbus number 2, Washington number 3. Of the teams that can come back in these series.
And Calgary.
I don't think I would rank them that way.
Carolina. I'm just doing the 3-1 series. Carolina and
I wouldn't rank them that way.
Arizona's not coming back.
The concern again, as with Phil, I guess now from Montreal's perspective, is they have to somehow figure out a way to get to the middle of the ice. That's the problem. Mac. They've gone 2 games now.
Yeah.
Philadelphia has, and Vigneault, whether this was by design or not, his line mixing in the middle of the game. This is where you're going to see now the potential issues. Like if this was Claude Julien coaching them, I would say I'd feel a little bit more confident in them coming back in the series. I just don't know if Muller's has the coaching acumen at this point to be able to match with a guy like Vigneault right now, who again starts with his lines and then completely shifts them. And it was intentional. I mean, we saw the interview. He flat out said, you're going to be playing on the top line right after the initial draw, and it was that way
because of this bubble. We're seeing directly coaching more than we've ever seen it before, and and this is because there are very few things that differ, from home teams and away teams and stuff like that, and Vigneault makes them. Vigneault almost, it looks like he almost wants to be on the road. Because he likes playing with Montreal's head a little bit with the different kinds of lines he's putting out there, and he's actually getting Muller to play guys that Muller doesn't want to play as much. We
saw initially at the beginning. I mean, Montreal had, and I made note of this because I was on Natural Stat Trick and I was putting together my piece for Russ's website. They had 10 different line combinations. We were talking about how Philadelphia changed things up. In game, Muller had 10 different line combinations out there in that game. He was struggling for any kind of answer. And they were just, every time they got into the offensive zone, they got plastered against the glass. They were getting killed in boardwork. Even if they have more high danger chances than Philadelphia did, they just couldn't get to the part of the ice where they could do anything with it.
And Muller's in a tough spot because he wants to, he's coaching. Obviously, he's not the head coach, but he's thrown into the spot. They're not scoring. So the first thing you're going to do is change lines around. I'm sure he feels the pressure to do that more than he would if he was always been the head coach there, where he could say, okay.
Well, he changed lines around in game 2. I mean,
I know. I mean, he's doing a lot of line shifting, and some of that's like he's been sitting there as an assistant coach saying, I would do this, I would do that, I would do this, I would do that in his head, right? He's also, no question, talking to Julien about things, and there's stuff that Julien's telling him ahead of time, like, this is what I want, this is what we should try to do. But there's that changing lines around to score, and then there's the point at which that doesn't work. And if that doesn't work and you go back to your other lines, which we saw the Flyers kind of doing at some points in this series, where the Flyers were going back to like Couturier and Giroux and I forget who else they were throwing out there.
Well, they did sometimes early in the series.
Raffle kept moving up on lines too.
Well, that's what they did yesterday. Raffle, right after he started the game on fourth line, he was told, he said it in the press conference afterwards, that you're going to be playing up on top line. This was these line combinations were pre-planned. Which
is brilliant when you're going against a coach like Muller, who's being told what to do, and now Muller has to actually make decisions.
As I joke, when I was having a joking conversation with Charlie O'Connor from The Athletic, I say he used the line of introducing a little anarchy to the series. I'm like, are you asking me to use that Joker gif now?
Yeah.
That's basically what's happening here.
All that being said,
here we go.
Why I say Montreal is the most likely to come back from 3-1 out of anybody was the reality is these are 1-0 games. And Montreal is hitting posts. I mean, granted, they're pointing out Carey Hart's making saves before they hit the post sometimes, but they're still hitting so many posts.
Yesterday they had no chance to score.
I would say that was true. That was far more true the other 3. Game 4, they were just anytime they got in, the
Flyers played a lot better in game 4. Montreal's looking a little bit tired. They played that series against the Penguins tough. Mm-hmm. They chased the Penguins around with a lot of speed. They're not using their speed.
That's the issue. There's only so long. You have to conserve energy at a certain point. When you're trying to play a hyper forecheck, and when you're trying to contest every single lane, that works in bursts. But invariably, you are going to hit the wall. And that's one of the reasons why Philadelphia had been trying so many. People were complaining about them trying these cross-ice stretch passes. They're trying to take advantage of Montreal's hyper-aggressiveness. That hasn't quite worked.
They are right. Where their cross-ice passes really aren't working are in the offensive zone. I mean, that's trying to get – and Clement, it's like he works for the Flyers, but he's doing everything he can but say the Flyers have to stop making these idiot passes. They're not working because, when you listen to it, we see him here in Philly, but, the Flyers are trying Giroux. And, is trying so many of these passes. And it's bizarre because Giroux is such a good playmaker. Well, never seen him make so many bad decisions on passes.
Well, let's touch on the other 2 games from yesterday and then move forward for the games for today. I mean, I watched a lot of Stars Flames yesterday because the series was tied 2-2 and the Stars won 2-1. It's a tight series. I think the Stars have the advantage right now, but like Russ pointed out when we were talking earlier, the great equalizer is Khudobin. He is so incredibly average
from game to game. Right.
I mean, and the thing is, I think the Stars, especially with Tkachuk out of the lineup, the Stars' size up front is causing the Flames a problem. Guys like Ben, guys like Rupe Hintz and Faxa, and even like the character guys like Pavelski and some of the veteran guys like Como and Cogliano, I think are posing a problem for the Flames. And Talbot's played good, but Talbot's had a weakness here. He's given up 2 game-winning goals on long shots from Klingberg, which, I mean, maybe that's the book on him now. Maybe they're just going to throw things from the point at the net.
I mean, Klingberg does have a great shot, though.
He does, but I mean, these weren't blasts, Russ. These were like floaters.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, I think Dallas should be favored going into Game 6, but Khudobin has just not been great.
No, he hasn't.
My gut feeling in this is that Calgary will even this series up, and we'll see a Game 7 in there. It just has that feeling that.
I hope so too. I mean, obviously, all
top line has to show up.
I'm just pulling for longer series in every game I watch. That's what I do.
I mean, then the Capitals coming back and winning 3-2 yesterday probably was great news for you because that would have been a sweep if.
And I thought that the Capitals, did get their ego a little bit. There were some players on the team that decided that this was a real a real embarrassment to get swept out by the Islanders. You know?
Yeah, Ovechkin wasn't going to let it happen. I give him credit too. I mean, he really was a force.
And their
he was amazing. Now, whether or not he can play down,
if you're going to go by effort level in the first period, I just thought Washington didn't show up in the first level. I'm not sure what flipped the switch between the first and the second, and maybe
when he got hit.
Maybe. And it was Ovechkin early on, but he basically said, you know what, we're not going home yet, and just took over the game.
Yeah.
It was amazing. Now, whether they have the gumption to do that for
who hit him, but he took a hit, and after that, it got him going.
It was such a stupid
thing. I according to the chat, and I didn't see this, but Radko Gudas did a knee-on-knee with Clutterbuck.
Clutterbuck's supposedly going to play today, according to Trotz, though. What came out is he thinks he's going to play as of right now.
Yeah, but you got to remember, Clutterbuck already had a bad back, so playing like this, he's going to be hampered to a pretty great degree.
Right. Yeah. It's a good series now. I mean, you have if the Caps can win another game, you know, usually what happens, and we've seen it in these like 3-0 or 3-1 games, it's always game 5. If the team comes back from out of nowhere, like, and wins the series, it's always game 5 that the team that loses the series will look back on and regret. Like, that tends to be the game where they blow it. Like,
well, the Caps did come back in 2009 to do just that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, John
Cooper on this panel may remember that.
Oh yeah.
John Cooper was talking about closing out the series yesterday against Columbus. He wasn't taking things for granted, but how important it is to basically step on a team's neck when they're down. And right now, I mean, we're going into
talk about Columbus doing like they're just such a movie type team. Like this
pain in the ass is what
the beginning of this game was so reminiscent of the beginning of game 1 of last year in the playoffs with Columbus and Tampa, where Tampa comes out 3-0 in game 1. Columbus comes back and sweeps the series. If they after coming up 2-0, and then if they come back and win this game, all bets are off, man, for game 6 and 7.
If they get Backstrom back, and he did skate as an extra, and they're waiting to hear the results. If the results are good and he's back for game 5, that's massive.
And for Columbus, you have to say that the injury to Cam Atkinson in game 1 was a big key, because right now through 4 games and 2 periods, these teams have scored the same amount of goals. And Atkinson left the series in game 1 after that 5 overtime game, missed the second and third games, and he's had points in the last 2 games. And for a team that can't score, that was very important for the Blue Jackets. So we'll see what they do in the third period. The other 2 games tonight, Bruins, Hurricanes, Avalanche, Coyotes. The Bruce Cassidy said that Pasternak is feeling better and that he may play. I'd be surprised, Russ, because like we were saying,
I wouldn't play him yet.
Yeah, they're up in the series. Why risk it?
I wouldn't risk it either, especially a core injury.
Yeah. You got 2 games up in the series. You can afford a potential just to make sure that he's good to go. And I actually think Carolina will squeeze another one out here.
Yeah, I think definitely can.
I don't think Boston's going to close them, but I do think, I still wouldn't push Pasternak immediately.
But Svechnikov is reportedly not playing today.
Yeah, that's what I heard too. No, I mean,
I know.
All assumed, but it's like I'm telling you that I talked to people that weren't just pulling my leg. That they said, that he's really the kind of guy that they just wouldn't be surprised. Like, it wasn't as serious. They thought it wouldn't be surprised if he found a way to do it. Like, he's that kind of warrior. They really were just like, who knows?
Yeah, but this could be also like the fog of war of the playoffs. They want to think that there's a chance that they want to put him in there, but
sure, no question about it. I mean, I think that those are the things you have to look at, and then. And in Arizona, I mean, that's the tough one. I mean, obviously, in order for them to even win a game, Kemper had to play miraculously. Yeah. And in order for them to get for win 3 games in a row, that's just not happening.
At some point, they're getting closed out.
Yeah, and I think that, now I will bring out something else, too, that someone brought up to me. This was somebody I talked to on the Islanders, and the Islanders said that, even though you never want to lose that game, like you lost them yesterday, there was a feeling like they didn't want to sweep that series out either, because –
who wouldn't want to sweep?
Stop.
No, and just hear me out. What they're saying, they were just they're saying, that they wanted this team to have like some adversity. They felt like the Caps weren't giving them a battle, and they wanted them to face a battle because they know whoever they face in the next round will be more of a battle. And I see, and it was really a pretty easy series until
Well, at this point, if every team leading the series 3-1 wins in the East, it's Philly, Islanders, and Boston, Tampa.
Yep.
You know what that's like? I'm going to give you an equivalency for take
Yeah.
You're in a heavyweight fight. You're getting kind of bored with the fight. Maybe you're Ali or Tyson or whatever in your prime. You take your foot off the gas a little bit. You could get knocked out. Buster Douglas can come.
Oh yeah, no question about it.
Buckner.
I mean, this is not a player that was talking to, somebody within the Islanders organization.
I always thought the Douglas fight. It was already getting to that point in that fight anyway.
No, but I see. I mean,
it wasn't a shot. It was grinding.
The players don't want to lose. I completely agree with that, 100%. This is not a player, and it's not even a person who wants to lose. This is a person in the organization that was maybe finding the grass is always greener part of losing.
Okay.
Well, the game of the night, we have to wait until 10:30. Although maybe we can catch a nap during Canadiens Flyers. The game.
You'll be taking a nap. It ain't gonna be me.
Yeah,
He has been out of the playoff for about a week.
Montreal has to open up tonight. I think we're going to see a little bit more.
Mike, you would love to be playing boring games right now.
I'm
I'm feeling like a
quiet. Seriously?
No, I'm not. Me keep quiet, never.
All right, start then. How about that? It makes sense then. How's that?
Tarasenko's gone. Tarasenko is left.
I'm feeling like Philly Montreal final scores like 4-2 or something like that tonight, just to make up for the lack of offense in the series.
I think there will be some scoring.
1-0 in triple overtime. But no, Canucks Blues game 5 at 10:30. I mean, if you look at momentum, you have to say that the Blues are and experience. You have to look and say the Blues are favored here. But these playoffs have been so screwy that I can't really say who's going to win this game.
Tarasenko is left the bubble, remember? No.
Yes.
Yeah, he's out of the bubble, but he'll come back if he's healthy. Like it's.
But he's going to have to quarantine again when he comes back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this, everybody knew he was going to do this. This is for the birth of his child, right?
No. It was shoulder.
Take a look at his shoulder.
Oh, I thought it was the birth of his child.
Shoulder issue. And interesting note that came out of from WEEI in Boston regarding Tuukka Rask. I can't remember the name of the host, but he had talked to Rask.
Hill, I think.
Yeah. He had spoken to Rask, and Rask didn't want to elaborate too much, but the reason for him leaving the bubble was a health emergency, a medical emergency with his daughter.
See, we talked about that.
All of this crap that came out about him being selfish. I mean, it's these idiots who just jump on things right away. It's like I honestly, it's like when you don't know the facts, shut the hell up.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. And a lot of it piggybacked, unfortunately, on like him saying some things in the game before that, where he was saying some stuff, and people took that as him. And we talked about that being overblown too. But you combine that with him actually leaving, it became a thing, right? And
it was actually Barbashev who was the one who left, the Blue who left for the Ivan Barbashev.
I knew it was
I do want to say happy birthday to Oscar Lindblom, 24 today. He got to skate with the team. If you'd have told us all that was going to happen 4 or 5 months ago, we'd have been like, no way, man.
If we go to the next round, Anthony, percentage of Lindblom playing
goes up a little bit depending on how they're playing, but again, it's at least they said it was at least we're looking at least 2 weeks to a month, but it'll be down to I would say he's got to feel like he's ready. At this point, he's not. He's set himself. It depends on the circumstance, depends on the scenario, but I think they have to be close to closing out the next series or going into the conference final before they consider putting him in. And it would be in a sheltered fourth line role. You're asking him to come to be up to speed and as everybody else is, and it's going to be tough.
Let me ask this question about the offseason for the Flyers. How big of a challenge is it going to be for Chuck Fletcher to find a home for James Van Riemsdyk? Because
I think it's pretty challenging. And to me, it seems like they're going to probably have to almost wait until it's time for the expansion draft. That's going to be it. I just don't see,
The one team I've heard is New Jersey having interest in him.
That's going to be a tough sell, I think.
I mean, obviously he's a Central Jersey kid.
Yeah.
But I think at the same time,
But you have to consider again. Yeah, do you have diminishing returns there, Eck, with regards to this offense? Number one, If the coach doesn't feel confident enough in him, I don't get any indication today. We'll see, obviously, later on that whether or not JVR is going to play or not. Right now, I don't. Based on what Vino said today, doesn't sound like it. It sounds like he wants to go in predominantly with the lineup that he has. We're still waiting on Obey Cabell. That'll be a simple swap out with him and Connor Bunnaman. But again, JVR at this point right now, he was a passenger for 3 games in this series.
Yeah, Josh Harris. I'm like, wait a minute. So we took Wayne Simmons, took a chance. That didn't work out. Why am I taking all the Flyers crap here?
And on top of that, it's not a deal where it was heavy signing bonus. Most of his contract is base salary, so that's something that where if there was like a big signing bonus on say October the 9th when free agency starts, they could trade him after that, and the other team would be paying less money out of pocket. And we know that Josh Harris doesn't particularly want to pay money out of pocket, so I don't know whether that works.
I do want to say something about one more player that I did take a note on here, and that is Raffle, who that shot, man, that was an impressive.
He has it once in a while, man.
He has it. I mean, I still remember Claude Giroux talking about it was in an interview one time where he said, if he's played with more in a prominent role, he says he wouldn't have a doubt that he could flirt in the 30-goal range if depending on how he's used. But he's always been he's been sort of a jack of all trades for Philadelphia.
Really interesting with him because I
think he had 20 goals one year. The one year he was on the top.
He did. I have to check his numbers, but I think he did. I'll have to check.
3 summers ago, my daughter played in a tournament over in Austria. And we were over there for the soccer tournament over in Austria. We were over there in Austria, and we were in this big stadium. And there, in that big stadium, I was talking. Somebody came and found me because they knew I covered hockey, and they're like, "Oh yeah, somebody wants to talk to you." He's like the big hockey guy in Austria, on the internet or whatever. And I met this guy. He was a really cool guy, and basically, talked about Raffle forever. And there were pictures of Raffle all throughout this guy's office and different things. Like people just don't realize like the star that this guy is.
Yeah.
In his homeland, and just it was really fascinating to see because looking being in the NHL, covering a team that he's on, and seeing him as he steps up to the first line, can play third line, but they like the tower that is Michael Raffle in that country among the hockey world is phenomenal.
Raffle had you're gonna love this stat line. This is 2014-2015. 67 games played. 21 goals, 7 assists.
Yeah, but I remember the goals.
Cy Young winner.
Cy Young.
And otherwise, his other highs would have been in 15-16 with 13 goals in both 15-16 and 17 and 18. His highest point total in the NHL was in that 15-16 season. We had 13 goals and 31 points. Probably playing a bit more on that. I would have to check, but probably a lot more on that front line.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The thing that he does so well is just like when he's with those guys on the top line is he will go and he'll do the forechecking work for them.
Oh, yeah.
He'll get the puck back. He'll get the puck out to them. And because he's strong. He's much stronger than people realize. He's a very physically strong player. He's not a fighter, but he is a powerhouse he's got powerhouse of strength in his leg.
The mistake that teams usually make is they usually leave Raffle alone and he has a good shot. So if you let him walk in, he'll take a great shot.
You also saw the way that Carey Price played that shot. Marty Biron brought this up on Twitter, and that it was not to say Price necessarily was completely wrong on how he played it, but he played the shooter rather than played the puck.
He did.
And if you see his positioning and how he's kind of not completely square up, and if you're going to wire it where Raffle did it, I mean, it was going to be tough for any goalie to stop the way he perfectly placed it.
Some of that comes from this is Raffle. He's not thinking this is like a sniper. You're not thinking this guy is going to snipe the puck. So you can play a little bit, can shoot a little bit more towards his body. He also is a player that does bring the puck in sometimes, does that in shot. And I think that also, it just was like it was just his release was surprising to Price. I think his release shocked him. And I don't think, I heard what Biron was saying, and to me as a goalie, it looked like, and I never got to see the really good angle, but it looked like Raffle did disguise where he was going with that shot before, as it was coming through the puck, like right before he shot it, it looked like he was heading the other direction, and he just caught. Price looked bad on that shot, and it was really.
Was this on the Myers? The Myers?
No, you're talking about the first goal.
Talking about the
Raffle, the drop pass from Couturier and Raffle.
Because he looked terrible on the second goal.
There was a little bit of a weirdness to that second goal where Myers threw it. It deflected off of Kulak.
Yeah, it did,
and it knuckled. And I think had Price let it go and didn't play with his paddle, it would have fluttered wide.
Right.
But he put his paddle out and it hit just in the right spot and skittered into the net on him. It was
one of those things, you know.
Yeah.
Throw the puck at the net and things, you know. And it really did. It really, that deflection of a Kulak was pretty wicked. It really was. Like, it was a
knuckled. It definitely knuckled. It was a weird play.
He just got a little bit of elevation before it hits the defenseman's stick and then goes down and bam, 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 in. It's a tough. That was doing all kinds of things on its way. So for Price's perspective, they're sitting and say, "Oh, you should just let it go wide." A puck that's
it's a judgment call by the goalie. Do you push?
Doing that kind of stuff on the ice?
Based on his paddle, he looked like he was trying to push it up or push it out or push it out the way he kind of had his stick, and it just caromed at a point with the way it knuckled that it hit off the it hit the bottom of the paddle and immediately, just physics-wise, just kind of caromed in.
What I was taught to do in that play is almost treat it like you're a catcher with a ball in the dirt, you know.
Yeah.
Get everything in front of it. Just get everything in front of it because that's what you need to do.
Let's finish with this, because Zach, you had this in your blog yesterday this morning about Anthony D'Angelo and the Sabres.
Yeah.
Now, I want to ask Jan about this, because if you look at the Sabres, the last type of defenseman they need is Anthony D'Angelo. I'm saying he's an offensive guy. I think they've got that covered on their blue line, and the Sabres would have to trade assets to get D'Angelo since he's a restricted free agent. And I think the Rangers have cleared the cap space to sign him. So I don't know.
So I wrote my fast blog today, right? And so the Rangers right now have about $13 million in cap space before they figure out what they're doing with Lundqvist, what they're doing with Stahl, and what they're doing with Brendan Smith. Now, after next year, those three guys officially come off the books, which saves you about $22 million, right? But you need to figure longer term, right? Adam Fox is going to want a big deal down the road. Igor Shesterkin is going to want a big deal down the road. Ryan Lindgren is going to get a bridge contract. You're going to have to deal with Filipino down the road, Capo Caco down the road. And also you're dealing with basically a flat cap. So to figure all this in, especially D'Angelo is going to probably want close to $6 million a year based upon the kind of season he had.
He's not getting $6 from anybody.
He's gonna. If you're gonna go a long-term deal,
the Rangers won't pay him $6.
The Rangers are not going to look. They're going to try to do a bridge deal.
Yes.
The question is can you get him at a reasonable rate on a 2-year bridge deal? And then the other question is, they're loaded because of all the guys coming up on the right side. Ideally, the best place to put D'Angelo would be on the left side next to Trouba, because he has played his opposite side in the past. But look.
Trouba doesn't love his opposite side. Let's talk about that. I mean,
I know. Well, I'm saying move D'Angelo to his opposite side, not Trouba.
Okay. Sorry.
Move D'Angelo. We already very good at Pete on the conversation. I asked him that question. He would have given us chapter and verse on Trouba playing his offside. But I mean, the other piece of the puzzle, and I haven't written my blog yet, but my blog today has gotten completely hijacked with this, is D'Angelo's political views. Right, and I'm not going to go into it, but he made some comments against a tweet that Shayna Goldman had yesterday. It didn't go over particularly well. Yeah. He's made some other comments in terms of recently, and all that has to get factored into the mix when you want to see as to whether or not you're going to sign a guy long term. So, look, I think if the Rangers had a guy they would love to get from Buffalo and they're not giving him up, it would be a guy like Jake McCabe, who would fit in kind of perfectly with that team. But Buffalo's not going to move McCabe because those are the kind of guys that they need.
Right.
But
they need that.
They do need another offensive blue liner, Buffalo, besides Retsalainen. Well, we all know Rexy's been kind of rough in terms of defensively since he's been there.
If you're talking, you're breaking up there, Rick. If you're talking Brandon Montour, or if you're talking a Colin Miller, then I think they would move him. And there's been a lot of talk about them, and this is something we're gonna have to watch over the next month or so. Teams with the flat cap with restricted free agents may not qualify these guys when they normally would, simply because the rules for arbitration have changed, that even if a team the team's offer is accepted, the player can accept that offer rather than the team walking away. So teams don't want to get stuck. Like Brandon Montour, I think on a qualifying offer would make close to $4 million. The Sabres probably don't want to pay that. So some teams may walk away from these players. I think CU and Edmonton's another one. They may walk away from these players rather than locking themselves.
Yeah, they're going to get assets for them.
With Montour, they came out yesterday and said specifically that they weren't going to do that. They said that.
Yeah, they're not going to walk away.
You can only walk away if the ARB figure is above a certain amount, right? So if that ARB figure comes in below, you can't walk away. And I think it's somewhere north of $4 million.
Well, the rules changed from in the new CBA apparently. So I mean that was the rule before, but
right.
now
That was the old rule.
It's definitely it's an interesting rule for rumors. I've been following it, Mike. You're right about what you're saying. It definitely does open up another angle that you have to look out for rumors.
I think those guys would get traded at the draft if they felt like that was going to happen.
They're going to
the Packers up 4-2 now, guys.
They have to get traded though before they're qualified, Russ. That's
right.
I get it.
Yeah.
No, I think we could see that. And I think I think Montour could be moved. I think that what you're seeing
could be moved.
And I think with Buffalo coming out and saying that they're definitely going to, they're going to qualify him, that they're not going to play that way, is partially to make him more tradable. Like they're going to sit there and say that's, we're going to make sure that people know that we think he's got value. We're not just letting him walk.
Right.
So I think that's, and I think everything Jan brought up is valid. And I that's why the Sabres are interested. I think Ritzalainen could very easily be out of there, in which case you do have room for him. He does fit a hole. And maybe he's moved out of there maybe that's part of this trade. I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen.
Yeah.
A lot of things could happen there, but we got to get going, guys. It was really fun show. As always, thank you, Peter. I know my Siri just decided she didn't get what I was saying.
I was waiting for the Pac-Man noise.
I know.
She's not the only one, but let's be fair.
Man, love you guys. You guys are the best. All right. Anthony, I never got your answer, by the way.
On
the value of the Montreal Canadiens still playing versus their 1 in a zillion shot at Lafreniere.
Oh, in terms of that, it depends on how. Again, the problem is now it's the shading of knowing that the Rangers want it. It does kind of it makes it difficult for them.
They always had just 12.5%.
But so did the Rangers. The Rangers.
Yeah, so the Rangers. They did too. I mean, maybe at this point, but they may look at it and say, "Hey." They may look at it from the experience perspective of, hey, Jesperi got some valuable experience.
Yes.
Nick did. Some of the younger players. One guy I didn't think that hasn't been particularly great and haven't used him that much is Victor Mete. He would, I don't know if this experience has been that fabulous.
And John, how is that Jonathan Drouin trade looking right now?
And that's the other thing too. The Drouin is just.
I don't get Drouin. I really don't. I'm starting to
figure it out. Because the problem is they screwed him up. They should have never
screwed him up. I don't know.
They screwed him up by playing him at center. That was the biggest. Trying to put him at first line center was ridiculous.
Asinine.
When he's never been when he barely Russ. He barely played it in.
Just played some. That's it.
And it made no sense. And you're going to plug him in. It was just not a good move. And I'm not sure what we're going to get out of Drouin going forward.
Yeah. Well, I think whatever you're going to get out of Drouin is going to be with another team because it's more than likely going to be a sort of a crap for crap deal where they.
In Shortak, I'm going to say I think there is some value to some of the players on that team.
I appreciate you at least saying that much because
the only way
to half a sandwich on this, not a.
There's no one else saying even that much, Anthony.
The only way to win it is to be in it, Eck.
I know.
You took a bite out of the sandwich.
I'm saying flat out, no. You're wrong. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. We will.